Do you know which is the strongest Hashira? Which is the fastest? Did you know that one of them is related to Upper Moon number 1? So my people, how are you? I hope you are well. Today we are going to talk about some curiosities about the Hashiras. In fact, there are more than 150 curiosities. This video took a lot of work to be done, but it's ready. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon most talked about demon slayer on YouTube, and you're on my channel. Let's start with Demon Slayer's least stylish Hashira, MUICHIRŌ TOKITŌ.
What was the shape of that cloud again? What was it called?
MUICHIRŌ has extrasensory abilities, which allow him to feel the presence of demons without even looking at them, in addition to being able to differentiate the human soul from the soul of the Onis. However, Nezuko's soul is not an Oni soul, according to what Toichiro feels. MUICHIRŌ had a twin brother named Yuichiro, and both were heirs of the Tsujakuni lineage, that is, both were direct descendants of the family of the man who is now the number 1 Upper Moon. Both their mother and father met tragic deaths. Their mother passed away due to illness, and their father was killed in an accident. You may have already noticed that unlike the other Hashiras, MUICHIRŌ wears clothes that are much wider for his size, and he does this so that his opponents cannot easily predict his movements, since the clothes hide a good part of his movement and body positioning of your joints. MUICHIRŌ TOKITŌ is 14 years old and was born on August 8th. He is 160 centimeters tall and weighs 56 kilograms, being the shortest Hashira among men. In the beginning, while not regaining his memories, MUICHIRŌ was apathetic and emotionless, and he never made decisions based on feelings. In addition to having a lot of respect for the master, MUICHIRŌ saw Kagaya Obuyashiki as a father figure. Kagaya was like a second father to him. MUICHIRŌ is the only living human who is related to Yoriichi Tsujakuni. TOKITŌ thinks Tanjiro's personality is very similar to his father's. That's why sometimes the things Tanjiro says triggers Mist Hashira. When TOKITŌ was asked his opinion of the other Hashiras, he described each one as being an animal, Shinobu as a bird, Tengen as a monkey, OBANAI as a wildcat, GYŌMEI as a bear, Rengoku as an owl, and SANEMI as a wolf. The only ones he didn't describe as animals were MITSURI and TOMIOKA. He described MITSURI as a pink girl with very nice hair, and TOMIOKA as a decorative object. According to Kokushibo, MUICHIRŌ was at the physical peak that someone could reach at his age. MUICHIRŌ TOKITŌ gained Hashira's position 2 months after picking up a sword for the first time, being a prodigal within the Demon Slayer Corp. Mist Hashira is the only Hashira in the entire work that managed to eliminate an Upper Moon without the help of any other Demon Slayer. MUICHIRŌ made the final selection along with Aoi Kanzaki, but he continued to evolve rapidly until he became a Hashira. According to the official fanbook, MUICHIRŌ ranked 7th in the physical strength ranking, ahead of OBANAI and Shinobu, while in the speed ranking he ranked 8th, ahead of OBANAI. Despite liking animals, TOKITŌ could never have a pet, because if he did, his crow would be jealous. The surname TOKITŌ has a kanji that means time. MUICHIRŌ has one of the highest pain resistances out of all other demon slayers, being able to continue fighting without having a part of his body. MUICHIRŌ was the first Hashira to awaken his demon slayer mark, and the second to access the transparent world. TOKITŌ was one of the 4 Hashiras who had a normal Nichiren blade, without any kind of adaptation. Apart from him, only SANEMI, TOMIOKA, and Rengoku used normal swords. Breath of the Mist is a breath focused on using rhythms of speed to create illusions in the opponent's vision, creating several openings for fatal attacks. MUICHIRŌ mastered this style so much that he was able to create the 7th form of his breath. Now let's talk about the most powerful Hashira and demon slayer, GYŌMEI HIMEJIMA.
Alas, to see such a pitiful creature as this, I grieve for him. Perhaps it would have been better if he hadn't.
GYŌMEI HIMEJIMA is the tallest and also the heaviest among the Hashiras, at 220 centimeters and 130 kilograms. GYŌMEI was extremely faithful to the concept of what a demon slayer was, and like Hengoku, he believed that the beauty of human life was to live and die like a human. GYŌMEI is the most physically prepared human being out of all the demon slayers, and was praised by the other Hashiras and was also praised by the number 1 upper moon, being named the strongest demon slayer in 400 years. GYŌMEI is the only Hashira in the entire work who does not use something resembling a sword as a weapon. The weapon he uses is an axe and an iron ball connected by a chain, and this weapon was made with the intention of compensating for his blindness, and although it is not a Nichiren blade, it was made with the same materials and has the same properties of being bathed in the sun, as well as the swords of the other demon slayers. Like MUICHIRŌ TOKITŌ, GYŌMEI was a prodigy and became a Hashira in just 2 months. GYŌMEI HIMEJIMA is 27 years old and has a birthday on August 23rd, being the oldest demon slayer of the Demon Slayer Corps. GYŌMEI was blinded as a child as a side effect of a high fever. GYŌMEI is most often portrayed with tears in his eyes. He is usually a very sensitive person and cries over many things. GYŌMEI came into contact with Buddhism when he was very young, and the teachings were passed on to him by a monk. Seo, the girl who survived the Oni attack on the GYŌMEI temple, blamed herself for many years for the Stone Hashira, being accused and imprisoned in that situation. Even after a decade, she still wanted to apologize to him, but unfortunately in the end of the manga, this did not happen. When GYŌMEI was sentenced to death by mistake, he began to doubt and fear all the children's claims, but he gradually got over it by talking to Kaguya Ubuyashiki. GYŌMEI was responsible for introducing KOCHŌ and SHINOBU KOCHŌ into the Demon Slayer Corps. GYŌMEI contrasts with Upper Moon number 1, as both were the strongest of their respective classes, and both were the trusted members of their masters, GYŌMEI being Kaguya Ubuyashiki's trusted Hashira, and Kokushibo the Upper Moon in which Muzan more trusted. One of GYŌMEI's hobbies was playing shakuhachi, which is a type of game played with a bamboo flute that is quite common among Buddhist monks. Besides Shinobu and MUICHIRŌ, GYŌMEI is the only one of the Hashiras who have a personal connection with one of the upper moons, and that connection is with Kaigaku, who was the child who facilitated the Oni's entry into GYŌMEI's temple. GYŌMEI was the first Hashira to awaken the Demon Slayer mark over 25 years old, so he already woke up being under the effects of the curse of the mark. According to Kokushibo, just by awakening the mark in that situation, GYŌMEI would already die a few hours after activation of Brand. GYŌMEI's father died because of an illness, and his mother died during childbirth, making the Stone Hashira grow up an orphan. When we read the official Demon Slayer fanbook, and we see GYŌMEI's opinions about the other Hashiras, we realize that even though he is blind, he is very good at reading people's feelings. He was the first to realize that OBANAI was in love with MITSURI, and that MITSURI liked OBANAI. He also noticed that SANEMI liked KANEO, and also that Tomioka and Shinobu were happy when they talked to each other. The focus of stone breathing tries to imitate earth and stone, the robustness and fortification of these two materials. It is a breath with 5 forms, the 5th form being the most powerful, called the Arcs of Justice. GYŌMEI loved cats, and often talked with MITSURI about this subject, and during the Demon Slayer One-Winged Butterfly novel, he was seen by Miss Yuri, tending to a cat in the rain. Even though he is blind, GYŌMEI reached the transparent world, and because of this ability to transcend what would be normal vision, GYŌMEI is now able to see with his other instincts united, making him able to use this ability to the fullest of his potential. The name GYŌMEI has a kanji meaning line. The surname Himejima means to scream, and has the kanji for touch and sadness. Now let's talk about the most beautiful Hashira of all, MITSURI.
No way! You'd really kill such an adorable child as him? Such a thought fills my heart with sorrow.
MITSURI is 19 years old and is a relatively tall woman. In the search to make this video, I found some information on websites and even in other videos here on YouTube that she would be short, having just over 150 centimeters, but in fact she measures 167 centimeters, being taller than other male characters like TOKITŌ, OBANAI, and TANJIRO. A lot of people have doubts about how MITSURI's sword fits in its scabbard even though it's so long, and the answer to that is very simple. When keeping it in the scabbard, the sword is folded. This is possible because it is extremely flexible, and despite many find his sword very strange, this weapon really exists and is called Yorumi, which is a typical South Indian weapon, and in my opinion is the coolest sword represented in Demon Slayer. Mitsuri's hair has this different color, because she eats a food called sakura mochi, and because she eats a very large amount for a long time, the pigmentation present in this food changed her hair color. And the most interesting thing is that in real life, if you eat large amounts of this food it can actually change her hair color, not as drastically as we see on Mitsuri, but it can happen. Mitsuri wears very flashy striped socks, and these socks were a gift from another Hashira, OBANAI. This happened right when Mitsuri joined the Demon Slayers Corporation, and she felt very ashamed because her clothes were too short. So OBANAI gives as a gift for her these socks so she could cover her body more. Very cute. The uniform Mitsuri wears was designed by Kikuchi, one of the people who works for the Demon Slayers Association, and other similar uniforms were designed for Shinobu, Kaneo, and Aoi. But when they saw that the uniform was low-cut and short, they refused to use it, and they burned these uniforms and demanded that they be made new, without the necklines. Mitsuri was the only one who could not refuse and accepted to keep the uniform the way it was, and she continues to use it until today. And you, which uniform do you prefer, the one that is more open and low-cut or the one that is closed and without neckline? Leave it in the comments. Mitsuri is in love with OBANAI, and he is also in love with her, and Mitsuri has tried several times to declare herself to him but never succeeded. But at the end of the story, they finally declare themselves to each other, in a very emotional scene. Mitsuri and Shinobu are great friends. They got closer after the death of Kane, the Hashira of the flower, as they are the only two female Hashiras left. Mitsuri teaches Shinobu a lot of Western cuisine, and they get along very well. Once Mitsuri even decided to ask her friend for love advice, who doesn't understand much about the subject, and tries to explain love to Mitsuri in a scientific way, which results in a very strange and funny dialogue. Both Mitsuri and OBANAI have already made a special appearance in another manga. Yes, and it's not a derivative of Demon Slayer. No, it's a totally different manga. The manga in question is called Tanakaku Kawaii, and although they don't appear with the full face, because of copyright, it is possible to see that it is clearly the two. They appear in the middle of a restaurant, talking normally, and the most interesting thing is that they are in the middle of a date. Mitsuri has a musculature 8 times denser than that of a normal human being. This means that although she has thin arms and does not appear to have much muscle mass, in practice she should have arms the same size or even larger than the Tengen, only all this muscle mass is super compacted in her body. This makes Mitsuri one of the strongest characters in physical strength in the entire work. One of the proofs of Mitsuri's immense physical power is that in the final battle against Muzan, she managed to pull off one of the arms of the King of Demons, using her brute strength, making Muzan himself surprised. Mitsuri's biggest hobby is eating, and some of her favorite foods are Western, such as pancakes and other slightly more exotic foods. In addition to that, she eats in large quantities, being the person who most spends money on food in the entire Demon Association. Slayers, and all that food is for her to maintain her muscle mass, which as already mentioned, is extremely dense. Mitsuri was the only woman in the entire work to be able to awaken her Demon Slayer mark, making her physical strength even greater than it already was. Mitsuri is passionate about cats. She even named several of her techniques after cats' names or something involving cats, and she also enjoys talking about them with the Hashira of the GYŌMEI stone, who loves to talk about it. And despite all this love for felines, Mitsuri's current pet is not a cat but a rabbit, and she keeps bees, since she likes honey very much. Mitsuri is unfortunately not one of the most popular characters in the work. In Japan, most manga do periodic popularity surveys to find out which characters the public likes the most, and Mitsuri in both surveys was in the same place in the ranking, in 12th place. Now let's talk about Hashira, who likes snakes the most, OBANAI.
How shall we make him take responsibility? What kind of lesson shall we teach him?
OBANAI is 21 years old, and was born on September 15th. He is 152 centimeters tall and weighs 53 kilograms. That is, he is one of the lowest stature Hashiras in the Demon Slayer Corps. Serpent breathing was a breath developed by OBANAI himself, and is a variation of water breathing, and it focuses on treacherous movements made from illusions, for which he uses a sword with a different shape, having a pattern full of ripples. OBANAI has heterochromia. His right eye is yellow and his left eye is blue. and he is partially blind in his right eye, meaning he can barely see out of that eye. When he was 11 years old, Obanai's family cut his mouth off so that he would look more like a demon that looks like a snake, so Obanai always walks around with something covering his mouth. The white snake that rides on Obanai's shoulders is called Kaburamu, and for Obanai it is not just a pet, but his best friend. His snake always helped Obanai in battles, since somehow it managed to communicate with Hashira, compensating for the lack of vision in his right eye. And even in the final battle against Muzan, when Obanai was practically blind, he was still able to fight thanks to the Kaburamu. Obanai has gynophobia, which is the excessive fear of women, so much so that the first few times he interacted with Mitsuri, he was almost unable to talk to her. He would just approach and be quiet and shy around her. Obanai's Japanese voice actor Kenichi Suzumura is married to Tomoyo's Japanese voice actress Maya Sakamoto. The first time Obanai met Mitsuri, he was so shocked that Kaburamu had to bite him to bring him back to reality. Mitsuri was the only woman Obanai found beautiful in his entire life, but unlike her he doesn't eat much, Hashira being the one with the smallest appetite of all. Despite that, whenever he went out with Mitsuri he made an effort to eat more, even if he didn't feel good about it. Obanai gave Mitsuri many gifts, from clothes to books, but he always took care to choose gifts that would be useful for her. The author of Demon Slayer has stated that Obanai is not as physically strong as the other Hashiras, and because of the way he was raised as a child, the author used the rather weak term to describe the character. Obanai only got to know the outside world at the age of 12, when he escaped from the cell in which his family kept him. Like GIYØ TOMIOKA, Obanai isn't good at expressing himself, but unlike Tomioka, who was indifferent in many situations, Obanai even managed to express himself, but he often sounded unsympathetic and moody, so much so that he sometimes avoided speaking with Mitsuri for fear of her being hurt by his way of speaking. Obanai is a nocturnal person. He doesn't like the sunlight that hinders his vision, so he is usually seen more often at night. Obanai considers Sanemi, the wind Hashira, to be a very close friend, as the two always got along great. Obanai was one of the only 3 Hashiras who managed to reach the transparent world, but he couldn't stay in that state for long. Obanai was one of the Hashiras who had the most misconceptions about GIYØ TOMIOKA, as Obanai was under the impression that Tomioka was arrogant and looked down on other Hashiras. Obanai cared a lot about his cousin who survived an Oni attack on their family, but when he found out what happened to her, he was extremely frustrated, as he found that she was living happily, enjoying the dirty money that her family gained over time, as she lived as if the tragedy had never happened, and this irritated Obanai greatly. Now let's talk about Hashira, who has the most wives in Demon Slayer, Tengen Uzui.
In that case, I'll decapitate them with style. I'll show you the most dramatic spray of blood ever. It'll be a spectacle.
Tengen Uzui is 23 years old and was born on October 31st. He is 198 centimeters tall and weighs 95 kilograms, being the second tallest Hashira in the work. Tengen had 8 brothers. 3 of his brothers died because of the excessive training done by his father, since he and his other brothers were placed in a type of battle to the death between them, where Tengen was forced to kill 2 more of his brothers. Tengen had a habit of saying that he was going to hell, but thanks to his wives he lost that habit. Tengen finds Obanai's eye colors pretty and wild, and has confessed to feeling a little jealous. GYŌMEI was the first person Tengen encountered who was taller than him, and he also recognized GYŌMEI as an extremely strong person. According to the official Demon Slayer fanbook, Makyo, one of Tengen's wives, is actually part of his family, being a distant cousin. Suma is Tengen's first wife. Originally the wife promised to him was her sister, but at Sumi's insistence, the two switched positions. As a ninja, Tengen is extremely stealthy, and manages to infiltrate any environment without being noticed, and this skill was recognized by Inosuke, who, several times, did not notice Tengen's presence. Tengen and Inosuke are the only demon slayers that wield dual swords. Everyone else wields a single blade. Tengen's musical score technique is not simple to do. It requires considerable combat time where Tengen analyzes the opponent's movements and techniques by sound, managing to understand the attack patterns and creating a perfect fighting style to counterattack that opponent. Uzui is also able to apply this technique by watching and listening to combat. Another great ability of Tengen is the echolocation, which consists of analyzing the slightest noises in the air to verify information about the analyzed area. With this, Tengen can locate opponents, locate allies, verify the number of people in a place, and even find the location where the battle is taking place. Tengen has a serious self-esteem problem, and tends to put himself down in relation to the people he most admires. Tengen is the fastest Hashira in the Demon Slayer Corps and the second with the highest physical strength, second only to GYŌMEI Himejima. In addition to his swords, Tengen always carried anti-oni bombs with him on his missions, as well as his poison kunai. Tengen has thought several times about destroying his own clan, but he always gave up on the idea when he thought he would have to kill his father and brother to do so. Tengen consolidated his 3 marriages at age 15, by his family rules, where polygamy was accepted and encouraged as an obligation. The Breath of Sound was created by Tengen himself, combining his enhanced hearing with musical scores. Now let's talk about our dear butterfly girl, Shinobu.
Let's come up with a penalty later.
Shinobu KOCHŌ is 18 years old and was born on February 24th. She is 151 centimeters tall and weighs 37 kilograms, being the shortest Hashira and also the one with the lowest weight. Shinobu was one of the Hashiras who developed her own breathing style, insect breathing. She developed this style from flower breathing, which she was unable to use because of her low physical strength. Shinobu and Yashiro never got along. When Kaguya Obuyashiki joined Shinobu with the pair of Onis, Yashiro and Tamayo, Shinobu became suspicious of being working with 2 Onis, and Yashiro realized that and always argued with Shinobu in defense of Tamayo, and Tamayo always tried to smooth things over. Unlike other Hashiras, Shinobu doesn't like any kind of animal with fur at all, so she has a pet fish called Fugu. Doma, the upper moon number 2, fell in love with Shinobu. Yes, that sounds kind of strange, but it happened, and the reason apparently is that Shinobu was the first person to manage to make Domater some kind of feeling, but she obviously didn't respond to this strange love. The insect breathing has its movements focused on imitating the bite of insects through thrusts with the sword, so its sword does not cut, and works more like a needle with which it applies the poison. Both Shinobu's and Mitsuri's swords were made by the head of the blacksmith village, the oldest and most skilled blacksmith, Tekshin. Shinobu and Tengen Uzui had an argument when she found out that Sound Hashira tried to kidnap Aoi. Shinobu was responsible for taking care of MUICHIRŌ Tokito's mental disorders. According to her, MUICHIRŌ is a good boy, but he has difficulties choosing the right words to express himself. Shinobu probably had some feelings for GIYØ TOMIOKA, since in the official fanbook she says that she would like the Water Hashira to talk a little more, and completes by saying that it is very good to hang out with him. Shinobu's surname KOCHŌ, and also that of her sister Kane, means butterfly. Shinobu's sword scabbard has modifications so that she can control the amount and potency of the poison she will use in her attack. Shinobu's parents, before they passed away, worked in the pharmaceutical industry, and this explains her incredible talent for developing poisons. The author of Demon Slayer made a mistake in the manga chapter of Shinobu's fight against Upper Moon number 2, Doma, which is in the part that is said about the proportion of poison present in Shinobu's body. Originally it is said that the amount is 70 times a lethal dose, but in the final version that was printed, this value was corrected to 700 times. The name Shinobu can have 2 meanings in Japanese. The first means stealth, and the second means remembering. Shinobu ended up incorporating her late sister's personality traits. This for Shinobu was a way of honoring her sister, so even when she is angry or frustrated, she always hides those feelings behind a smile, since when her sister was alive, she always wanted her sister to smile. Now let's talk about our Hashira Emo, GIYØ TOMIOKA.
Oh, I think it's fine. He did come here without resisting.
GIYØ TOMIOKA is 21 years old and was born on the 21st of February. He is 166 centimeters tall and weighs 69 kilograms. The red side of GIYØ's kimono honors his blood sister Tsutako Tomioka, and the side with the green and yellow pattern honors Sabito, his adoptive brother. Tomioka is perhaps the most rational among the Hashiras, while the others harbored a strong hatred for all Onis. Tomioka was the only one who considered the option of not killing them if they were not devouring people, and this allowed him to be convinced by Tanjiro to leave Nezuko alive. After the final battle against Muzan, Tomioka became very close to Tengen and his family. They created such a friendship that Tomioka was one of the first to hold Tengen's son in his arms. The crow that accompanies Tomioka is already an old bird, and she often gets confused and passes the wrong messages to the Hashira of the water. GYŌMEI says in the official Demon Slayer fanbook that Tomioka always seemed to be happy when talking to Shinobu, despite the fact that most of the time he is a very closed person. After losing his sister and parents, Tomioka ran away from the rest of his family. He later met and was adopted by Master Urokodaki, who is a former water Hashira and the person who trained him. Tomioka felt a little envious of the feeling that Tengen Uzui exuded everywhere, because apparently he wanted to be free like Tengen. After the final battle against Muzan, Tomioka was in a coma for 3 months, and every day he was visited by Nezuko, who asked him to come back from the coma. Tomioka considers Sabito a hero, and he grew up blaming himself for the death of his adoptive brother, who died saving Tomioka during the Demon Slayer's final selection exam. Ju was very sad and hurt at being talked down to by the other Hashiras, as everyone had the wrong impression of him, as they thought his closed-mindedness was actually arrogance. Tomioka mastered water breathing so much, to the point of creating an 11th form, since originally there were only 10 forms, and this technique developed by Tomioka is the most powerful of all. After the final battle, Tomioka's Haori was almost completely destroyed because of Muzan's attacks, but Nezuko managed to restore it completely, using his craft. Tomioka was so happy and moved by this that he started sending countless gifts to Nezuko as form of gratitude. In the official Demon Slayer fanbook, Tomioka apparently has a great admiration for Shinobu, saying that she is very serious and hardworking, but he also says that sometimes she is a very mean person. Now let's talk about the most pyrotechnic Hashira of all, KYŌJURŌ RENGOKU.
Protecting a demon is a clear violation. We can deal with this on our own.
KYŌJURŌ RENGOKU is 20 years old and born on May 10th. He is 177 centimeters tall and weighs 72 kilograms. When the women of the Rengoku family became pregnant, they performed a ritual called Kankagari every 7 days, where the pregnant woman spent 2 hours staring at a large torch, and this ritual served for the baby to receive the blessing of the flames, and is supposedly because that's why all the males in the family are born with hair the color of flames. Rengoku had an outgoing personality and was completely open to meeting new people, Hashira being the friendliest of them all. Rengoku had a passion for watching matches, and his favorite style was sumo wrestling. Rengoku became a Hashira after defeating Lower Moon No. 2, and this story is told in the spin-off, Rengoku Kyujuro Gaiden. Hengoku was envious of GYŌMEI Himejima's immense physical strength, and he thought Stone Hashira's physical build was amazing. Rengoku had no disciples, as everyone who went to train with him ran away after seeing the difficulty and training of Flame Hashira. Rengoku learned most of flame breathing alone, just by reading a 3-volume book. In Demon Slayer's special one-shot we see Rengoku, in one of his first missions as Demon Slayer, facing the Flute Demon, and when facing him the Flame Hashira is temporarily deaf, but apparently, he manages to recover his hearing later. Rengoku ranks 5th in the Hashira speed rankings, losing to Tengen, Sanemi, GYŌMEI, and Shinobu. Flame Hashira dreamed of having a pet dog to keep him company, but his father Shinjuro, who didn't like animals, forbade his son to adopt one. Despite not having the same physical strength as Mitsuri or GYŌMEI, Rengoku was among the physically strongest Hashiras, having been able to surprise Upper Moon 3 without even having a Demon Slayer mark. Rengoku is not among the most popular Demon Slayer characters in Japan, as he ranked 7th in popularity polls. The surname Rengoku means purgatory, and according to legends, Purgatory's flames are the hottest in the afterlife, which would go well with the fact that he was the Flame Hashira. KYŌJURŌ means longevity. Rengoku didn't awaken his Demon Slayer mark, because he spent very little time close to Tanjiro. If they had stayed together longer, the mark would probably have awakened in the fight against Akaza, and maybe the result would have been different. Now let's talk about the most violent Hashira of all, SANEMI.
What the hell do you think you're trying to pull here exactly?
SANEMI Shinazugawa is 21 years old and was born on November 29th. He measures 179 centimeters and weighs 75 kilograms. SANEMI didn't want his brother Genya to be part of the Demon Slayer squad. That's because SANEMI wanted Genya to have a family and live a happy life, without having to risk his life fighting the Oni. SANEMI has been killing demons since he was a child. Long before joining the Demon Slayer Corps, he tied up the Onis and left them in the sun to die. To become a Hashira, SANEMI defeated the #1 lower moon of his time, but that fight cost his best friend his life. The wind breathing is one of the most aggressive breaths in the work, as it doesn't focus much on defense. On the other hand, it has an extremely powerful attack. Once SANEMI saw Kikuchi, who is the guy who made Mitsuri's uniform, harassing a rookie Demon Slayer girl. Upon seeing this, SANEMI screamed so loudly that Kikuchi pissed his pants. In the official Demon Slayer fanbook, it is confirmed that SANEMI liked KOCHŌ, and he even mentions that he spoke to Shinobu from time to time, just as an excuse to find out how Kane was doing. When giving his opinion about the other Hashiras, SANEMI says that Tengen Uzui acts like an older brother to him. The word written on the back of SANEMI's coat literally means kill. SANEMI is very proud of his muscles, which is why he always wears his uniform open. SANEMI is a dirty fighter. He has no problem using any questionable method as long as it is for the sake of defeating the Oni. In the final battle against Muzan, SANEMI already arrives throwing alcohol and setting fire to the King of Demons, who says that is suck game. The Wind Hashira is the most feared demon slayer of his generation. Apparently the demons preferred to meet GYŌMEI or Tengen than SANEMI, as SANEMI caused very brutal and cruel deaths. Of all the Hashiras, SANEMI was the one who despised Tomioka the most. SANEMI felt that the Water Hashira completely despised other demon slayers. Most of SANEMI's scars were inflicted by his mother when she turned into an Oni, and he had to face her to protect his brothers. SANEMI has very rare blood, and those people with rare blood are called MUICHIRŌ. For an Oni, the nutritional value of 1 MUICHIRŌ is equivalent to the blood of 100 people, but the most unbelievable thing is that SANEMI has the rare blood among rare bloods, and the nutritional value of his blood is equivalent to that of 1,000 people. His blood is so differentiated that he even managed to stun the #1 upper moon for a moment. Guys, this video took a lot of work to make. If you liked it, consider subscribing to the channel. Have you watched my video about 66 secrets of the upper moons? I'll leave it on the final screen. That's it, my people. Until next time, demonic hugs.